Prepared yourself? Because tomorrow isn't just another day quietly passing through your life, it's a threshold. And the unsettling part? Almost no one will realize it's happening. While most people wake up, grab their phones, scroll through endless noise, and drift into another predictable routine, something far more powerful is taking place beneath the surface. Something that doesn't announce itself loudly, but changes everything once it begins. And if you've been feeling that strange tension lately, that subtle pressure sitting deep in your chest, like something inside you is tightening, preparing, waiting, then this isn't random. It's not stress. It's not just another passing mood. There is a reason for it, a precise reason. And I'm going to reveal that, but not yet. Because first, you need to understand what is actually unfolding. April 19th, 2026 is not just a date. It is a turning point. It is the moment where drifting ends and grounding begins. On this day, the sun moves out of Pisces, the realm of dreams, illusions, and emotional currents, and enters Taurus, marking the beginning of Taurus season. And on the surface, that might sound simple. The sun changes signs every month. It's predictable, routine, expected. But this shift is different, because this isn't just about movement, it's about weight, it's about density, it's about reality finally catching up to everything you've been imagining, avoiding, or postponing. This is the moment where discipline stops feeling like restriction and starts becoming power. And here's where it gets unsettling. Because the energy you've been swimming in recently, the confusion, the emotional haze, the feeling of being slightly lost even when nothing is technically wrong, that wasn't a mistake. That was Pisces. That was the fog. That was the dissolution of structure, the breaking down of old patterns, the quiet erosion of things that were never meant to last. You are not meant to act clearly in that space. You are meant to feel it, to drift in it, to lose certainty, because something deeper was preparing to take its place. And now, that place is here. When the sun enters Taurus, everything slows, but not in a weak way, in a heavy way, in a grounded, immovable, undeniable way. Taurus does not rush, Taurus does not chase, Taurus builds, and that changes everything. Because what was once fluid now becomes solid. What was once imagined now demands form. What was once optional now becomes necessary. And that's why you feel it. But this isn't happening in isolation. This isn't just about the sun quietly stepping into a new sign. There is something much larger forming behind the scenes. Right now, Saturn and Neptune, two of the slowest, most powerful forces in the entire system, are converging at the very beginning of Aries. And if that doesn't sound significant, think again. The last time these two forces came together under similar conditions, entire systems collapsed, structures dissolved, reality itself shifted for millions of people. This is not subtle energy, this is foundational energy. Saturn represents structure, boundaries, time, the unbreakable laws of reality. It is the force that says, this is what is real, this is what lasts. Neptune is the exact opposite. It dissolves everything. It blurs lines. It erases certainty. It represents dreams, illusions, imagination, the infinite. When these two collide, something paradoxical happens. Illusion meets reality. Dreams either become real or they vanish completely. And now, with the sun entering Taurus, that collision is no longer abstract. It is no longer something you can ignore or postpone. It becomes physical, tangible, real. You can't stay in your head anymore. And if you've been paying attention, even subconsciously, you've already felt the buildup. It didn't start today. It started days ago. There was a clearing, a quiet release. Maybe something in your life shifted unexpectedly. Maybe something you thought was stable suddenly felt uncertain. Maybe a plan you trusted started falling apart. Or maybe nothing obvious happened, but you woke up with that strange feeling. that something had changed, even though you couldn't explain what. That was the beginning. Then came the fog, the emotional weight, the confusion, the sense that you were floating between clarity and uncertainty, unable to fully grab onto either. That was the dissolving phase. That was Neptune doing its work, breaking things down, removing illusions, softening structures that were never meant to survive what's coming next. Because what comes next requires strength. And that's where April 19 changes everything. Because when the sun steps into Taurus, the fog doesn't disappear instantly, but it begins to settle. And as it settles, something else becomes visible. Something solid, something undeniable. Reality. Not the version you imagined. Not the version you hoped for. The real version. The one that requires effort. The one that demands consistency. The one that doesn't care how you feel, only what you do. And that's where most people hesitate. Because this is the moment where discipline becomes unavoidable. Before this shift fully locks in, there's a strange transition period, a moment where both energies exist at the same time. Part of you still feels the softness of Pisces, the desire to escape, to delay, to avoid pressure. But another part of you feels something heavier, something more grounded, something that says, enough. It's time to build. And that internal conflict, that's not weakness. That's the shift happening inside you. Your body might react to this before your mind understands it. You might feel restless, but not in an anxious way. In a focused way, like your system is trying to stabilize itself. You might feel an urge to organize, to fix, to structure parts of your life that you've been ignoring. Or you might feel resistance, a heaviness, a desire to stay comfortable, to avoid effort, to delay action just a little longer. This is where the real test begins. Because Taurus energy doesn't force you forward. It gives you the weight and waits to see what you do with it. And here's the uncomfortable truth most people won't admit. Most people will miss this completely. They'll feel something slightly different, maybe a little pressure, maybe a subtle shift in their mood, and they'll ignore it. They'll distract themselves. They'll scroll, watch, consume, avoid. They'll tell themselves they'll start tomorrow, or next week, or when they feel ready. And 6 months from now, nothing will have changed. Not because nothing happened, but because they didn't respond. But you're not in that position. Not right now. Because you're aware. You've felt the buildup. You've sensed that something is shifting, even if you couldn't fully explain it. And that awareness gives you something most people never get. A choice. You can align with this energy, or you can resist it. But you cannot stop it. Because once this shift locks in, it doesn't go backward. And that's where everything begins to change. Perfect, now we go deeper. This is where the tension tightens, the pressure becomes undeniable, and the shift stops being theoretical and starts becoming personal. Because here's what most people don't understand about a moment like April 19th, 2026, the day discipline becomes your power. It doesn't announce itself loudly. It doesn't arrive with chaos or visible disruption. It arrives quietly, but with weight. And that weight presses directly against your life, against your habits, against every unfinished decision you've been carrying. And if you've been paying attention, not just with your mind, but with something deeper, you've already noticed it. That subtle discomfort, that low, constant awareness that something isn't aligned anymore. That parts of your life don't feel as stable as they used to. Not because they're collapsing, but because they're being tested. And this is where it becomes real. Because the sun entering Taurus doesn't just bring stability, it demands it. It forces a question you can no longer avoid. What in your life is actually built to last, and what has just been surviving on momentum? And you might not have a clear answer yet. That's normal, because Neptune is still present in the background, blurring the edges, softening certainty, creating just enough fog to make things unclear. But Saturn is not unclear. Saturn is patient, but it is absolute. And with its presence amplifying this shift, it is no longer asking for your intention, it is asking for your commitment. And this is where most people break, not because they're incapable, but because discipline feels uncomfortable when you've been living in delay. Because discipline exposes something most people don't want to face. It reveals the gap between who you say you want to become and what you actually do every day. And Taurus energy doesn't ignore that gap. It magnifies it, slowly, quietly, relentlessly, until you either close it or you're forced to confront it. And this is where the internal pressure you've been feeling starts to make sense. Because it's not random, it's not emotional instability, it's not overthinking. It's your system recognizing that a shift is happening and preparing you for it. And tomorrow, that preparation ends. Because when Taurus takes hold, everything begins to crystallize. Your thoughts become decisions. Your intentions become actions. Your habits become identity. And the uncomfortable part? There is no shortcut through this phase. You can't rush it. You can't fake it. You can't think your way out of it. You either build or you remain exactly where you are. And this is where the real tension begins to rise. Because now, the question isn't, what's happening? The question is, what are you going to do about it? There's a moment in every transformation that feels almost invisible, but it's the most important part of the entire process. It's the moment where potential either becomes reality or disappears completely. And that moment is here. Because this shift into Taurus is not about inspiration, it's about execution. And execution is where most people fail, not because they don't know what to do, but because they hesitate when it's time to act. They wait for clarity, they wait for motivation, they wait for the perfect conditions. But Taurus energy doesn't wait, it builds regardless. And that's why this moment feels heavy. Because deep down, you already know what needs to be done. You've known it for a while. That project you've been delaying. That decision you've been avoiding. That change you keep telling yourself you'll make soon. That's not coincidence. That's alignment. Because this energy is pulling that exact thing to the surface, not to overwhelm you, but to force a decision. Move forward, or stay where you are. And staying where you are will no longer feel comfortable. Now here's where the deeper layer of this transformation reveals itself. Because discipline, real discipline, is not what most people think it is. It's not about forcing yourself into rigid routines. It's not about punishment. It's not about restriction. That's the surface level understanding. The real version of discipline is identity. It's the ability to act in alignment with who you are becoming, even when you don't feel like it. And this is where Taurus becomes powerful. Because Taurus doesn't rely on emotion. It relies on consistency. And consistency is what turns temporary effort into permanent change. This is why this shift is so important. Because it moves you out of a state of feeling and into a state of doing. And that transition is where everything changes. But before you can fully step into that, there's something else you need to face. Resistance. Because the moment you begin to move toward structure, toward discipline, toward consistency, something inside you will push back. It will tell you to wait, to slow down, to take a break, to start later. And it will sound convincing, because it's familiar, because it's comfortable, because it's what you've always done. But here's the truth. That voice is not guidance. It's inertia. It's the part of you that wants to stay the same. And during a shift like this, that voice becomes louder, not because it's right, but because it's losing control. And this is where the real decision happens. Do you listen to that voice, or do you act anyway? Because this is the difference between people who transform and people who don't. The ones who transform don't wait for resistance to disappear. They move through it. They act despite it. They build in the presence of it. And that's what makes this moment so powerful. Because the energy supporting you right now rewards action. Even small action. Especially small action. Because Taurus doesn't require perfection. It requires consistency. And this is where everything begins to align. Because once you take that first step, no matter how small, something shifts. Not externally, but internally. You feel it. A sense of control. A sense of direction. A sense that you are no longer drifting, but choosing. And that feeling? That's power. Not loud power. Not aggressive power. Quiet power. Stable power. The kind of power that builds over time, until it becomes unshakable. But there's still one more layer to this. And this is where most people make their biggest mistake. Because they think starting is enough. But starting without removing what's holding you back leads nowhere. And this is where the final piece comes in. You have to let something go. Not everything. Not your entire life. Just one thing. One pattern. One habit. One distraction. One attachment that you know deep down is not aligned with where you're going. Because Taurus builds, but it builds on solid ground. And if your foundation is unstable, everything you create will eventually collapse. So this is where you make the cut. Not emotionally, not dramatically, but decisively. You remove what no longer serves the version of you you're becoming. And once you do that, everything changes. Because now, your energy is no longer divided. It's focused. And focused energy builds faster than anything else. And this is where the shift completes. Not in a single moment, not in a dramatic event, but in a quiet realization that you are no longer waiting. You are no longer drifting. You are no longer uncertain. You are building. And when you wake up after this shift has settled, whether it's the next day or a few days later, you'll feel it. Not as excitement, not as intensity, but as something deeper. Stability, clarity, direction, and the understanding that something has changed. Not around you, but within you. This is where discipline becomes your power. Not because it forces you forward, but because it removes everything that was holding you back. Now the shift settles in, and this is where everything becomes irreversible. Because what most people misunderstand about a moment like April 19th, 2026, the day discipline becomes your power, is that the real transformation doesn't happen during the moment itself. It happens after. It happens in the quiet aftermath, when the noise fades, when the intensity stabilizes, and when you're left alone with the consequences of what you chose to do or didn't do. The sun has now fully entered Taurus, and the energy is no longer asking questions. It is no longer testing gently. It is establishing. It is locking things into place. What was uncertain begins to take form. What was fragile either strengthens or breaks completely. And you feel it, not as a sudden jolt, but as something deeper, something heavier, something that settles into your bones like a truth you can't ignore anymore. Because after a shift like this, life doesn't necessarily look different on the outside right away, but it feels different. The air feels more still, but also more real. Your thoughts feel less scattered, but more serious. There's a weight to your decisions now. A sense that what you do carries consequence, not in a threatening way, but in a permanent one. And this is where people begin to realize what just happened, although many won't understand it consciously. Some will wake up feeling strangely clear, as if something that used to confuse them no longer has the same hold. Others will feel slightly unsettled, like they're standing on unfamiliar ground, even though nothing around them has visibly changed. And that feeling, that subtle, almost invisible shift, is the aftershock. For some, it arrives instantly. A realization, a decision, a sudden clarity about what needs to be done next. For others, it unfolds slowly, like ripples expanding outward from a single moment, touching different areas of their life one by one. But make no mistake, something has been set in motion. The version of your life that existed before this shift is no longer fully accessible. You can try to return to old patterns, old habits, old ways of thinking, but they won't feel the same. They'll feel heavier, forced, out of alignment. Because once discipline has been activated within you, even at the smallest level, it changes your awareness. You can no longer pretend you don't know what needs to be done. And this is where the real divergence begins. Because from this point forward, there are only two paths, not dramatically different at first, but radically different over time. On one path, you continue what you started. You take the small action again the next day, and the next, and the next. You maintain the structure you created. You protect the boundaries you set. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, your life begins to reorganize itself around that discipline. Not overnight, not instantly, but inevitably. Because consistency compounds, and what feels small in the moment becomes powerful over time. This is the path where discipline transforms into identity, where effort becomes automatic, where the version of you that once felt distant becomes who you are. But the other path is quieter and more dangerous, because it doesn't feel like failure at first, it feels like delay, like I'll start again tomorrow, like I just need a little more time. And that delay slowly reopens the space for old patterns to return. The same distractions, the same habits, the same cycles. And because Taurus energy is slow and steady, it doesn't punish instantly. It simply reflects back what you consistently do. So if you drift, your life drifts. If you avoid, your progress stalls. And weeks later, months later, you find yourself in the same place, wondering why nothing changed, even though the opportunity was right in front of you. This is the part most people never talk about. Not the moment of transformation, but the maintenance of it. Because the truth is, transformation is not a single decision. It is a series of repeated decisions made quietly, consistently, without needing recognition or validation. And that's exactly what Taurus teaches. It teaches you that power is not loud. It is not dramatic. It is built, brick by brick, action by action, day by day. And here's where it becomes undeniable. Because once you've felt this shift, once you've recognized what's possible when you align with it, something inside you changes permanently. Even if you resist it, even if you delay, even if you fall back into old patterns for a while, you will still know. You will still feel that quiet awareness that you are capable of more, that you are meant to build something real, that you are not here to drift endlessly between ideas and intentions. That awareness doesn't disappear. It waits, patiently, until you're ready to act on it again. And this is why this moment matters so much. Not because it forces you into change, but because it reveals your relationship with it. It shows you whether you are someone who moves when it matters, or someone who hesitates and watches the moment pass. And there's no judgment in that, only consequence. Because life will always respond to what you consistently do, not what you occasionally intend. So now you stand here, at the edge of something that has already begun. Behind you is the version of yourself that waited, that delayed, that stayed in uncertainty. In front of you is something far more grounded, far more demanding, but also far more powerful. A version of you that builds, that commits, that follows through even when it's not easy, even when it's not exciting, even when no one is watching. And the space between those two versions is not time, it is decision. Because the truth is, the universe does not pause for readiness. It does not slow down for hesitation. It moves. And right now, it has already moved. The sun has entered Taurus. The energy has shifted. The opportunity has opened. And whether you step into it or not, it continues forward. So the real question is not whether this moment is powerful. It is. The real question is whether you will meet it with action, or let it pass like every other moment you once thought would change everything. Because now, more than ever, the choice is clear. Discipline is no longer something you think about. It is something you either become or you walk away from.